The Golan Heights, a rocky plateau overlooking northern Israel, has been a flashpoint for decades. This strategic territory has witnessed numerous wars and shifting alliances. At the heart of this volatile region lies a personal vendetta, one fueled by displacement and driven by a thirst for revenge. This is the story of Ahmed Al-Sharaa, better known as Abu Muhammad Al-Jolani, and his relentless campaign against Israel. Al-Jolani's story is inextricably linked to the Golan Heights. He was born into a Sunni Muslim family forced to flee their homes during the 1967 Six-Day War. Al-Jolani grew up in exile, carrying the weight of his family's history and the yearning to reclaim what was lost. The Golan Heights, a fertile plateau overlooking northern Israel and southern Syria, has been a source of conflict for decades. Its strategic importance, commanding a view of vital transportation routes and water resources, has made it a coveted prize for both nations. The 1967 Six-Day War saw Israel capture the Golan from Syria, displacing thousands of Syrian residents, including Al-Jolani's family. This event, burned into the collective memory of Syrians, fueled resentment towards Israel, and laid the groundwork for future conflict. Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights in 1981 further exacerbated tensions. The international community largely condemned the move, viewing it as a violation of international law. The displaced Syrians, scattered across refugee camps, clung to the hope of one day returning to their homeland. Their plight became a rallying cry for Arab nationalists, and a testament to the human cost of the ongoing conflict. Ahmed Hussein Al-Sharaa, better known by his nom de guerre Abu Muhammad Al-Jolani, is a figure shrouded in mystery. Born in the Golan Heights, Al-Jolani's early life was marked by displacement, as his family was forced to flee to Syria during the Six-Day War. Details about his upbringing are scarce. Some reports suggest a middle-class background, while others point to poverty and hardship in the slums of Damascus. Al-Jolani received a relatively good education, reportedly studying media at the University of Damascus. This background in communication would later prove invaluable as he sought to spread his ideology and garner support for his cause. Al-Jolani emerged as a cunning strategist and a charismatic leader, quickly rising through the ranks of the Syrian insurgency. The al-Nusra Front, under Al-Jolani's leadership, emerged as a formidable force in the Syrian civil war. Initially aligned with Al-Qaeda, the group distinguished itself from other rebel factions through its battlefield prowess and strict discipline. Al-Jolani's strategy focused on embedding his fighters within local communities, providing social services and enforcing Sharia law. While battling the Assad regime remained al-Nusra's primary objective, Al-Jolani never lost sight of his ultimate goal: the liberation of the Golan Heights from Israeli control. He skillfully exploited the chaos of the Syrian conflict to establish a foothold in southern Syria, positioning his forces within striking distance of the Israeli border. The rise of al-Nusra in southern Syria presented a significant dilemma for Israel. Israel found itself walking a tightrope, carefully calibrating its response to the Syrian conflict. Section 5. Israel's dilemma countering al-Jolani while navigating Syrian chaos. The Syrian civil war presented Israel with a complex and evolving security challenge. The disintegration of Syria's central government created a vacuum in the region, allowing various militant groups, including Al-Jolani's al-Nusra Front, to flourish. Israel, acutely aware of the volatile situation on its northern border, faced the daunting task of safeguarding its security interests while navigating the treacherous terrain of a multi-sided conflict. The presence of al-Nusra in southern Syria, just miles from the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights, raised alarm bells within Israeli intelligence circles. Al-Jolani's stated goal of reclaiming the Golan for Syria, coupled with his group's proven military capabilities, posed a direct threat to Israeli sovereignty. Israel's response to the Syrian crisis was characterized by a policy of mowing the grass, a term used to describe its strategy of carrying out targeted strikes against perceived threats emanating from Syria. Recognizing the dire humanitarian situation unfolding across its border, Israel also provided medical assistance and humanitarian aid to Syrian civilians caught in the crossfire. Section 6. The International Dimension, a tangled web of alliances and interests. The Syrian civil war, with its complex web of actors and shifting alliances, became a microcosm of the broader geopolitical struggle playing out in the Middle East. Regional powers, each with their own strategic interests and historical grievances, were drawn into the conflict, providing support to various factions and further fueling the violence. Russia's intervention in 2015, at the request of the Syrian government, marked a turning point in the conflict. Russian air power, combined with ground support from Iranian-backed militias, tilted the balance of power in favor of the Assad regime. Moscow's involvement, driven by a desire to prop up its ally in Damascus and reassert its influence in the region, had significant implications for Israel's security calculus. The presence of Russian forces in close proximity to the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights necessitated a delicate balancing act for Israeli policymakers. While maintaining its policy of striking Iranian targets within Syria, Israel had to avoid any actions that could escalate tensions with Russia. Section 7. The United States walking a tightrope between counterterrorism and regional stability. The United States found itself grappling with the complexities of the Syrian civil war, torn between its counterterrorism objectives and the desire to maintain regional stability. The rise of ISIS, a brutal extremist group that seized control of vast swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq, presented a direct threat to American interests and allies in the region. The Obama administration initially pursued a policy of limited engagement, providing support to moderate rebel groups fighting against the Assad regime, while simultaneously targeting ISIS through airstrikes and supporting local ground forces. The Trump administration, upon taking office, shifted U.S. strategy towards a more assertive posture. While maintaining a focus on combating ISIS, the Trump administration also authorized strikes against Syrian government forces in response to the regime's use of chemical weapons against its own people. This more interventionist approach risked escalating tensions with Russia and Iran, both of which were heavily invested in propping up the Syrian government. The U.S. faced a delicate balancing act in navigating the Syrian quagmire. Section 8. Turkey's gamble supporting Al-Jolani against Assad and the Kurds. Turkey, a NATO member with a long and porous border with Syria, found itself deeply enmeshed in the Syrian conflict, driven by a complex set of security concerns and geopolitical ambitions. Ankara, under the leadership of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, viewed the Assad regime as a threat to Turkish interests, particularly given its close ties to Kurdish groups in Syria that Turkey considered to be terrorists. In the early stages of the Syrian uprising, Turkey provided support to various rebel groups fighting against the Assad regime, including some with Islamist leanings. Turkey's involvement in Syria became increasingly complicated by the rise of Kurdish groups in the country's north. Section 9. A legacy of bitterness. The future of the Golan Heights and the Israeli Al-Jolani conflict. The Syrian civil war, now in its second decade, has left an indelible mark on the region, reshaping alliances, fueling sectarian tensions, and creating a massive humanitarian crisis. The Golan Heights, once a relatively quiet corner of the Middle East, has become a focal point of this conflict, with Al-Jolani's al-Nusra Front posing a persistent threat to Israeli security. The future of the Golan Heights remains uncertain. Israel, having formally annexed the territory in 1981, shows no signs of relinquishing control, citing security concerns and the historical connection of the Jewish people to the land. However, the international community largely views the annexation as illegal, and the issue remains a major stumbling block in any future Israeli-Syrian peace negotiations. Al-Jolani, despite setbacks and the fragmentation of his organization, remains committed to his long-held goal of liberating the Golan Heights. His ability to exploit the chaotic security environment in southern Syria ensures that he will continue to pose a challenge to Israel for the foreseeable future.